Hello and welcome to the John Burton Foundation's bi-monthly web seminar. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Simone Turek. I've recently rejoined the John Burton Foundation as the Associate Policy Director. It's great to be back after 2 years and to see that the number of people who attend these webinars that used to be conference calls way back when has grown significantly. That's great. It's great to have so many of you on the webinar now. We normally hold these webinars on the second Thursday of the month, every other month. Today, we know it's on a Wednesday, but it will be back to the second Thursday in May, so that'll be May 12th. First, just a few technical details that I'd like to remind everyone of. You're seeing the slides, so you're obviously logged on, but if you're listening through your computer speakers, just a suggestion, you may want to consider instead using a telephone to call in. You might get better sound that way. Information to call in is on the slide. And please, throughout today's presentation, feel free to submit questions using the chat function on the right-hand side of the screen on the control panel. And submit those at any point throughout the presentation, and we'll be doing a Q&A later in the webinar that will include your questions in. And as always, this presentation, along with the audio recording, will be available on the THP Plus website under past trainings, I believe. So today we are going to talk about the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the EITC, both the federal EITC and the brand new state EITC. We're joined today by a guest presenter, John Sciamana. John is the Vice President of Public Policy for the Child Welfare League of America, so it's great to have him here today. John will talk about the federal EITC and how it can be a helpful resource for many of the youth and families that we work with in the field. And then I'll briefly talk about the brand new CALEITC and remind everyone of just the bills and the budget proposals that are currently being considered in the state legislature that JBF is sponsoring. So I would like to just very briefly provide a little frame of reference. Why are we talking about the EITC today? Well, it's tax season, and this is a resource that the young adults and the families that we work with in this field should know about and should apply for, particularly for specific people, parenting youth who are 18 and over, and caregivers. We really want to make sure that these folks know about this as a resource. There are roughly 900 parenting dependents in California, 18 and over, and if they're filing for taxes, they should all be applying for the ITC. And we also know that relative caregivers in our state's child welfare system are disproportionately low income, and that we know that also many foster parents should be applying for this as well. And as John will get into, there are a number of types of different relationships with children with dependents that will qualify someone for a credit. And a foster child is one of those relationships. And so is a number of kin relationships. So, even for informal caretakers, they may qualify. So you'll hear more about that from John. And, just to kind of put some light on this, studies show that young children in households that receive EITC do better in school and are more likely to attend college and to earn more. So we really just want to make sure that the young people and the families that we work with are aware of this as a resource when they are filing for taxes. And so now I'm going to turn it over to John. Thanks, John, for being here with us. And I will go ahead and let you unmute yourself and take it from here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yes, John Sciamana with the Child Welfare League of America, and I should mention that I also rejoined them. I was doing some consultation for a couple years, and now I am back full-time. So pleased to assist folks here with this call on a very important, I think, part of the tax code, which has had a long bipartisan history, and I think it can be very beneficial. I will, when I wrap up, I will point you to some resources, but also the real leader in this in terms of the outreach across the nation has been the Center on Budget Policy and Priorities, and we Over the years, we, CWA, have tried to assist them in the ways we can in getting out some of the great material they put out, all intended to get more people signed up for the Earned Income Tax Credit, because it is a great tool to assist families, especially families with children. And so the first slide, I'll take you through what it is and some key things to look for and some aids here. But basically the EITC, which is the Earned Income Tax Credit, and I'll mention a little bit about another credit, which is the Children's Tax Credit. But combined, they've lifted annually around 9 million people above the poverty line. That includes about 5 to 6 million children. Now, currently, the federal poverty level, which is updated every year, is represents about $20,000 in income for, say, a family of 3. So think of a parent with 2 children. It's obviously adjusted by size, family size. But what it means is 9 million people, because of these refundable credits, have been able to go over that poverty threshold. So it's very important. The EITC, it has a long history of bipartisanship. It was actually created in 1975 with President Gerald Ford and a Democratic Congress. And actually every single president and administration has increased the EITC. In fact, Ronald Reagan once was quoted as saying it's one of the best anti-poverty programs we have. So along a record of bipartisanship, there has been some criticism of it lately in the more recent Congresses, but still continues to be an important tool. It is a tax credit, which is important, makes it more refundable, or makes it more beneficial, and it's also refundable, which makes it even more beneficial. And just kind of a quick example of what that means is, so imagine if you can, making $10,000, if you had a deduction of $2,000, you would take your $10,000 income, take the $2,000 deduction, which would lower your income to $8,000, and then you would figure out what your taxes were, say maybe 10%. You'd pay $800 in income tax. What a credit does instead is takes your $10,000 in income, and maybe if you're paying 10%, that's $1,000 in taxes. But a credit would actually then come off of that in that tax total. So if you had a $2,000 credit and $1,000 in taxes, it would wipe out your tax. So credits are much more beneficial. Also, the refundability here is really critical. The children's tax credit that I mentioned only became refundable in the last few years. And what that means is if you had $1,000 in taxes and you had a $2,000 credit, if it wasn't refundable, you'd wipe out your $1,000 in federal income tax, but you'd lose the rest of your credit. But if you had a $2,000 refundable credit and you owed $1,000 in taxes, it would wipe out your tax and it would give you a refund of $1,000. So regardless of what you pay in federal income tax. And again, I guess just for clarification, when we talk about income tax here, we're not talking about the payroll tax, what you think of as Social Security and Medicare, that everybody pays that. But you do your calculation on your federal income tax. But again, this is refundable, so regardless, even if you wipe out all of your federal tax liability, it will give you a refund. That's why it's so critical. And we can go to the next slide, and I can give you some examples of how this works. So let me fill in a couple things here not to confuse you too much, but it's based on the EITC, especially is based on the number of children you have. In recent years, they've added this new benefit for adults with no children, for 25 and older. So it's a much smaller credit, but it is new, and there are many advocacy groups, including ours, hoping we can get this increased in the coming years. But basically, that $503 in a refund you would get the maximum at $8,000. So from $1 when you're earning this income, when you reach $8,000, you would get the full $503. Then gradually it would decrease as you go to $14,000. Similarly, if you're a married couple, you would get without children, you'd get the $503 credit when you reached $14,800, and then by $20,000 it would phase out. The important part of this, the EITC, before I explain the other categories, is it gradually increases as you earn more money, and then you hit the peak, what they call the plateau, and then it gradually decreases as you continue to earn more money, and it decreases at a slower rate than it increases. So the intent is to encourage and help people who are working low income. So the other examples here is if you had one child and you were a single parent, you would get $3,359 once you reached about $17,500 in income. And then it would gradually decrease until you reached $39,000. For a married couple, you would get that maximum for one child if you reached $23,000, and then it would again gradually start to go down as you reached $44,000. For two children, if you're a single person, you get $5,548. You reach that when you make $17,500. So if you were a single mother making $17,500, you could get over $5,000 in a refund. So you can see why that's significant. Again, for a married couple, you would max out at $23,500, and then it would gradually reduce until you got to $49,000. And then finally, with the 3 and more children, this is also a newer provision of the EITC. It used to only go up to 2 children, but now if you have 3 children, you can get a credit of $6,242 when you reach $18,000 for a single person, and then it again it disappears by $47,000. And then for married couples, if you had 3 children, when you reached $23,500 in income, you'd get that maximum credit of $6,242. The numbers I'm citing in terms of income are ballpark. They're within a few $100s, but you get a sense of how it gradually increases, and you get a sense of how it can really be beneficial to families that are lower income. You can go to the next slide now. The children's tax credit, we're not going to spend quite as much time on this, but just wanted to put it in here. This is a fairly new credit created in the mid-1990s under Bill Clinton. It originally started out at $500 per child. It's now up to $1,000 per child. And again, it's for, and in this case, it's for children, different from the EITC. It's for children through age 16. So the EITC is a little older. But this, as I say, is a newer credit. Also, in the last couple of years, it also has a refundable. It has a refundability as part of it. That too is new, just within this administration. But basically, it comes out to $1,000 for one child, and $2,000 for 2 children, and then it goes up, as you can see. You can go to the next slide. So what is income? It's not just everything you bring in, but it's earned income. So again, that would be wages, salaries, tips, union strike benefits, long-term disability benefits prior to your retirement age, net earnings from for the self-employed. So what doesn't include things like interest or dividends, or if somehow you had some rent you were charging somebody, things like that, that's not considered earned income. Also, there's some of the other things such as Social Security and retirement benefits, welfare benefits, pensions, or annuities, and you can see the other various government benefits which don't count as earned income. So the next slide, we can talk about, so who are children? And they are basically all types of families. So obviously a son or a daughter, a grandchild, a stepchild, or adopted child. It also includes, in the case, especially in the kinship care settings, younger siblings or step-siblings or half-siblings or their descendants. So basically covers anybody who's a relative. It also covers, I think this is important, and I'll dig a little deeper into each of these, foster children placed by an authorized agency. And the other provision, which applies to any dependent, is that they must have lived with the taxpayer, with the filer, for more than half the year. So if you have these relationships, whether they're siblings or step-siblings or your son or grandchild, you have to provide support for them for more than half the year. So that's the definition of relative or dependent. And also it extends for the EITC under the age of 19 or until the age of 24 if the child or the young person is a full-time student and permanent or if at any age if they're totally and permanently disabled. So a little more expansive in the case of disabilities. So we can go to the next slide here. And bear with me as I had my screen go down, but we're back here. Okay, so how to file. Workers with children must file either Form 1040 or 1040A, and along with that, they submit Schedule EIC. In addition, you cannot use the Form 1040EZ or forget the EITC. So that's important to remember if you are applying for the full credit here. Excuse me, I'm just having a technical problem here. Okay, I may have to fly blind here for a while. Workers without a children, so again, the single adult can file any tax form, including the Form 1040EZ. So this is for the childless couples who are filing for the newer credit here, newer EITC. You can go to the next slide. Does it affect other programs? I think this is important. Okay, got it going. Does it affect other programs? Claiming the EITC does not affect eligibility for other benefits. This, I think, is very important. Benefits such as SNAP, the food stamp program, that is, SSI, Medicaid, cash assistance, or public housing. And also, I think, importantly with this, because most people will get a refund, so a saved tax refund does not count against federally funded benefit programs or resources or asset limits for the 12 months after you've received the fund. And foster children and kinship care. Next slide, that is. Okay, this is important, and it's why we have tried to partner with people to get the word out, because this can be an important assistance, and you are eligible for these benefits. So in addition to a son, a daughter, a stepchild, or adopted child, you may claim a grandchild. So again, kinship care, very important. It can be a very important assistance. And again, as I mentioned before, remember, it does cover other relatives, including younger siblings, step-siblings, half-siblings, or their descendants. Now, foster child placed by an agency. So you have to have an indication from the foster care agency. And here's an important, I think, point for kin families. Although foster families are increasingly comprised of extended family members, relatives have no legal obligation to become a child caregiver to qualify for these. So you're actually beyond, even if you are a relative caregiver who's a foster parent, you also have that relative connection that you can use that as your eligibility. So it wouldn't necessarily require you to have this designation as a foster parent. And it wouldn't make a difference in terms of your benefits. So as long as you're kin and you're relative, as you've seen here, the broad definitions of relatives, you can apply that way. Again, you have a foster child placed with the tax filer by an authorized agency, that is placed by the courts or a government agency, according to the IRS definition. You can go to the next page, foster children. Now here's I think an important issue here, and we would, maybe we can work with the Burton Foundation in terms of future information. But so if you're filing, a dependent, in any case, must have a Social Security number. In some cases of adoption, usually pending adoptions, there might be what's called an ITIN, which is an individual taxpayer identification number. There has been, anecdotally, we've heard over the years, that sometimes foster parents have difficulty in getting that Social Security number. It's kind of a challenge because there's also been a big push to try and protect children who are in care, who sometimes have their Social Security numbers used and basically can be used for fraud. So to the extent you are having difficulty, we would certainly like to know about that. And we have actually had some conversations with other organizations like the National Foster Parent Association about ways that we could simplify this, that we can maybe protect the identity of a foster child and get some other number, but we haven't really been able to make progress on that. But I think if there are problems in terms of you're getting a Social Security number from the foster care agency, we'd certainly like to know that, because we need to document that in terms of our discussions on Capitol Hill and with the IRS if this is a problem. So that, I think, is something that we would love to have feedback on if that does surface.
So John, maybe this is Simone, sorry. So maybe if there are people that do want to provide input about that, we can either connect them to you directly, or is there another way that we should be connecting them to your
I mean, I think even if you can collect that information,
okay.
I mean, if we can document stories, I think that would be very useful.
Okay,
because,
got it.
Certainly, yeah, and this might be a good example. I mean, if you do get a lot of reports, we need to collect that so we can go back to some people and say, here, we have some documented cases now. I think that's been the challenge to this point. So hopefully that won't be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess if people do encounter that, then reach out to us, to John Marino Foundation. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Continue.
Okay. The other point on this slide that I think is important, it's a little bit off the subject here, but I think it's important because it's from the IRS, which is you may be able to, as a foster parent, you may be able to deduct unreimbursed foster care expenses as a charitable deduction if the agency that placed the child receives charitable donations. So I just include that in there because that's always important. There are some benefits, I think, that you may not be aware of and that you should be able to draw down to. So we can go to the next slide here. And this is some help information. Again, I mentioned the Center on Budget Policy and Priority has been great on this topic for, I think, now 25 years, trying to get information out. They used to do physical kits. We used to pass them out at CWLA conferences. But now, of course, with everything, they're online, but there's some great material there. So if you actually go to EITC Outreach, all one word, EITCOutreach.org, you'll come up to their website, and there are all sorts of tools, including some of the ones that I will highlight here, but documents you can print, documents that come in multiple languages, which I think I'm sure will be useful in the state of California. And let me just highlight a couple other things you will find there. You can go to, there is actually some free tax sites or tax assistance near you. You can go to the IRS website, or you can call this number at 1-800-829-1040. I'm not sure what the wait times are these days with the IRS, but there's also a website link there, right there, which is irs.treasury.gov/free tax prep/. And if you go to that site, and again, if you go to the center, their outreach kit, you can even click onto that. But if you go to that site that's listed here, you can type in your zip code, and it can tell you where the assistance might be. There's also on the Center on Budget Policy and Priority, when you go to this site, and again, I'll mention it again, EITCOutreach.org, there's an estimator, and you click on the button, and it will give you information where you can click, say, a single parent with one child, and you can then punch in the number of income or what you think might be your income, and it'll give you a projection of what your refund would be. So you have an idea there. There's also on that website some other free services, some free tax preparation. Some of it's funded by the government. And then we can go to the next slide. And this is for seniors, which obviously in the case of kinship care could be very helpful. But AARP has been a great resource here. But you can get tax counseling for the elderly, TCE, sponsored by the IRS. It provides seniors and low-income families with free tax filing assistance. AARP, as it says, there is the largest participant, so you may even want to reach out to your local office. But there is a couple of numbers here where you can find where the nearest assistance or aid program is. So you can contact AARP at their 1-888-ARP now, and then the number is actually 888-227-7669. And then also on some of the on their website is some additional information in terms of finding locations. And then the last slide, which is just that button. That's what you will, when you go to this outreach for the Center on Budget Policy Priority, you can go onto that button, and if you hit that, that'll give you your tax estimator. That's it. Now, you're probably going to have to ask me questions because I'm still having problems with this.
Yes, no, don't worry. We will ask the questions out loud that people are submitting right now, and that's a good prompt. So if you have questions, go ahead and submit them. We always do get this request, is this presentation going to be posted? Yes, it will. So I won't ask that question. I won't respond to that question on the screen, but I just want everyone to know that is listening. This presentation will get posted along with the audio recording on the THP Plus website, and that URL is www.thpplus.org. And I believe it'll show up on the screen again once more before the presentation is over. So yes, we do have a Q&A. I do want to, before we launch into the Q&A, just quickly mention the CALEITC, which is new. And so while I'm doing so, please do submit your questions so that we can get to them during the Q&A session. So I'm going to.
And I have my screen back now too.
Oh, perfect. Now that you're not presenting anymore, right? Yeah. That's how it works, right? Briefly, I do want to talk about California's Earned Income Tax Credit, the CALEITC. This will be the first tax season that we're seeing this. So starting with 2015 tax returns. And thank you, John, by the way, for all of that great information on the federal EITC. That's really helpful. As you can see, for the CALEITC, it is a lower income threshold than the federal EITC. So like it says on the screen, if you qualify for the federal EITC, you'll likely qualify for the CALEITC. The amount that you'll qualify for is also less than the federal EITC. Again, just to underscore, this is a tax credit that many of the youth and families that you work with may qualify for. If you have no qualifying children, you do have to be at least 25 to qualify for the CALEITC. So this is why we keep mentioning youth, parenting youth, and caregivers with dependents with children. Many of these youth and families will qualify based on their income levels. I'm just going to go into kind of an overview of who qualifies at this point. You have to have wages and adjusted gross income within certain limits, which on the next slide we'll go into. Everyone has to have a Social Security number, and if you're married or in a domestic partnership, you cannot file separately. And then, and a lot of this is the same or similar to the federal EITC. If you have to have lived in California for more than half the tax year. As I mentioned before, you have to be between 25 and 65 years old at the end of the tax year if you don't have qualifying children. So this is going to just lay out for you on this next slide the income eligibility requirements and the eligible sources of income. As I said, they're lower than the CALEITC is lower. It's lower than the federal income requirements. So this is really a tax credit for extremely low-income individuals and families. For a family of 2 or more children, we're looking at less than $13,870 a year. And you can also see below that what the eligible sources of income are. So I won't read those out. You can see those, but similar to what John presented. And now qualifying children. I think one really important thing to pay attention to, as John mentioned, really is the descendant of any of them piece. This opens it up to a broad definition of kin and of, the children and youth that people in our communities may be taking care of. You may be a caretaker for your niece or your grandson or your ex-spouse's child or your foster child's child, and you claim them as a dependent. So, you may qualify for that larger return or credit depending on income and other factors, but it's always, best to see if you qualify. See if the youth, the older youth, and the families that you're working with qualify. Another important thing to pay attention to is the age of the child. John touched on this for the federal EITC. The child must be under 19 by the end of the tax year, but if they're a full-time student for at least 5 months out of the year, they have to be under 24 for the CALEITC. So that's something to pay attention to. And then the a child that does have a permanent disability can really be any age. Claiming the CALEITC, so you use the FTB 3514, and that's the Earned Income Tax Credit form, and the link for that is up on the screen along with a set of instructions. There's a link to a set of instructions that can help people complete that form. And then lastly, some more helpful resources for the CALEITC. I particularly want to highlight the CALEITC for Me website. This is a campaign to spread awareness because this is so new. A lot of people probably still are not aware of its existence, and so there's a lot of great resources on this website. There's fact sheets, so you could print them out and post them in your office or in your whatever venue that you're working in that may reach those that it would need to. And then there's an eligibility calculator. There is a search function to find free tax preparers. So this is a great website. And that is all on the state, the CALEITC, because John covered such a great kind of more comprehensive overview, I think, of the federal EITC. And I'd like to jump into Q&A at this point. So, John, I'm going to pop my questions out here. And if you can't answer them, no worries. We can, if we don't have an answer to your question, we can probably find it and then contact you at a later date. But, John, I will, just shoot some questions to you and see if you have answers for us. So one question is, and sometimes I think questions will probably ask something that was covered on a slide, but since we don't have it up anymore, maybe it's we'll just have to reiterate it. So is there a minimum amount a single mother has to earn to qualify for the federal EITC? They said, I think you said 17. I think you said 17.
Was that was yeah, that was those numbers when I mentioned that were the maximum amount of the credit. So no, I think it starts from, I have to double check, but I think it starts from $1. And what happens, and the beauty of the earned income tax credit is that as you earn more money, you start at the lowest level, you get a little bit of a credit and continues to go up. And then when I gave you those numbers at around, say, I think 17,000, that was when you got the maximum credit. So if you got 10,000 less, you probably got a third of that credit, and you can see it kind of goes up like a ladder almost. And then when you max out, you max out, you have what they call a plateau. So for the first, I think it's a couple thousand, you don't lose any money, you don't lose any refund, and then it gradually decreases and decreases at a slower rate. So, but no, for the earliest dollars, I don't know if it's $1, but it's pretty close to a few $100.
Okay, because this person said, I think you said 17. If she makes less than that, does she not get the credit? So the answer is she does, right? That is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There's not a minimum. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I should have made that clear on the slide. So it's a gradual increase until you hit that maximum credit.
Okay. All right. So next question. Oh, and sorry, I just do want to address this. Someone asked if we can email the presentation. We usually do email it out in addition to posting it, and we'll be emailing it out to just all of the people who registered for this web seminar, so I should also mention that. And then someone wants to know what was the minimum amount of income required for EITC with no children? So again, I think this is maybe a similar question.
Yeah, I'd have to look that up. I think, again, it's probably a few $100s, but it obviously isn't going to be very much at that level, at the maximum of 503. So what it was you get the $503 at $8,000. So it's, you know, it's obviously worth getting every penny you can, but I think it was probably several $100s.
Okay. And then we have a question that, again, I think this was covered. It would be great to reiterate this, though. The question is, are foster care payments counted as income?
No.
Yeah,
no.
So
they're not counted as income. Yeah, that's yeah, no, that's a good question. It doesn't, so it wouldn't, I mean, two ways. It wouldn't count toward this credit in trying to determine your income if you need to make more money so you can get a bigger credit. On the other hand, it's not taxable as income either.
Great. Okay, and we have a question that's I'll go ahead and read it. It's a little long here. Let's see. Okay. The W-9 for rental assistance is affecting former foster youth's ability to be competitive here in the San Francisco Bay Area rental market. Landlords do not often accept the W-9, feeling it is actually a benefit to the youth. Thus, they should be taxed. Is there a way, or is this a way we can then remain competitive in the housing market? Would these older youth benefit tax-wise?
W-9, I'm not as familiar. Is that a California?
I'm actually thinking this is maybe a little bit unrelated. I mean, it's a little unrelated. It's tax-related, but I think this is not related to the ITC. So I think we'll go ahead and follow up on that question later.
Sure.
At a later time.
Love to know about that too. Yeah.
Okay. Here's another one. We are working with a community that serves foster families and seniors. Most of our seniors do not have dependents, but are helping support our foster families. You mentioned California tax eligibility is 65 without dependents. Is this correct? And could you tell me a bit more about the seniors' eligibility? So I'm going to say that I am not an expert on California taxes. I know what I know about CALEITC from preparing for this presentation, but I would not feel comfortable giving tax advice to someone. So I am going to refer this question out, and so what I can do is follow up on that question at a later date, unless, John, you have something, unless you want to respond to that.
No, I don't know enough, except for again, I think in terms of dependents, I think in pretty much, I don't say all cases, I think in most cases, dependents, you have to have provided more than half of their support.
Okay.
However that calculation is. So, you could be supportive of somebody that may not qualify as being a dependent, though.
Okay, so the person who asked that question, we will follow up with you after this presentation. And let's see, do we have any more questions here? It looks like that is it for Q&A. Are there any last questions anyone wants to submit? I'll give it just a few seconds. And I think that is all for Q&A. All right. Well, again, John, thank you. At this point, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we are going to briefly talk about the bills and the budget proposals that JBF is sponsoring. And I know many of you have already heard about some of these. So I will not go into great detail, but I will mention them because we are currently accepting support letters for them. And then before I switch from this slide here, the website where the presentation will be posted is listed right there for you guys, thpplus.org. So now I'm going to launch into these, our legislative update. So the first bill here is AB 1838. This is Assemblymember Phil Ting's bill. And this bill would increase the infant supplement from the current amount of $411 a month to the existing basic stipend for foster youth caregivers. And so, just to, the infant supplement is the stipend that foster youth get to support the children that they have of their own. So if they have a dependent of their own, they receive a monthly stipend for the cost of care for that child to assist with the cost of care. And in most cases, it would go to the organization that is where the organization or family where the youth is placed. And in some cases, if the youth is in a supervised independent living placement, it goes directly to them. But basically, just to give some background, this supplement was established at $326 per month back in 1989. And if it kept pace with inflation, it would be at, just over $700 today, at $705.46 to be exact. And so this bill would, basically take it up to a more appropriate rate with today and inflation. And the bill would also start the infant supplement 6 months prior to the mom's due date. And so we know that this would encourage prenatal care and other services, and we know that that's just incredibly important. And then lastly, it would develop a new infant supplement for the group homes and for THP Plus FC providers who serve the parenting dependents. And we are accepting support letters for this bill. There is a hearing on March 29th, so it would be great to get support letters by the 18th of this month. And you can send those in to, you can send them to me, Simone at johnburtonfoundation.org, or you can send them to info@johnburtonfoundation.org. And I'm going to go into the next bill here. So this is Assemblymember Tony Thurmond's bill. This is AB 2506. And this would make a major change to the Chafee grant. It would really enable more youth to get this grant. Chafee is California's ETV, the Federal Education and Training Voucher. This was the federal ETV was established by Congress in 2002, specifically for foster youth to assist them with school, with post-secondary education. And since 2002, the number of foster youth ages 18 to 21 has tripled in our state because obviously due to AB 12. And then this has corresponded to an increase in the number of foster youth attending community college. So that's gone up 38% since 2012 when AB 12 was implemented. But the Chafee grant hasn't kept pace with this growth. So it's still at that 2002 funding level. And so what we see then is in 2014-15, 1 in 4 eligible Chafee applicants didn't receive the grant. So what this bill would do is turn Chafee into an entitlement, meaning that any student who applied by August 31st would be entitled to a Chafee grant. It would also restrict the use of Chafee funds at schools that meet certain graduation and loan default criteria that you can see up on the screen. And we're accepting support letters for AB 2506 by the 1st of next month for the April 12th hearing. Next is a budget proposal, and this is requesting $10 million, and really just there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot of things that would happen with this budget proposal and would do great things. I just want to kind of summarize it and say that it would really establish funding to prevent unwanted pregnancy among youth in foster care and reduce maltreatment among the children of dependents. It would be an opt-in program for counties that are willing to establish policies and procedures, and adopt proven strategies. So there's a lot in there. There's training, there's access to information, development of policies and procedures, and we have a sign-on letter for that. So not individual letters, but we're asking if you want to sign on to a support letter, please send us your name and organization by March 25th for the April 6th budget hearing. And then lastly, we are sponsoring a budget proposal in its early stages here that we're working with Assemblymember Tony Thurmond's office on as well. And it is really to expand eligibility for THP Plus to youth who are in foster care on or after age 16. So really what we're doing is we'd be moving it to be like ILSP eligibility is what it would be. It would align with ILSP, CHAFE, and then the new KFES program that is that 10 districts are implementing on 10 community college districts are implementing. So those are all 16 and over, have to have had a foster care placement on or after age 16, and so it would align THP Plus eligibility with those things. And we know that that's really important because there are several youth that miss out on THP Plus because they, something of the, they reunify, they enter into guardianship or into an adoption just after 16 or sometimes just before age 18. And then sometimes those things, either don't work out or they still need additional support. And so having THP Plus as an option to really to combat homelessness is a huge resource for youth. And so that's what that would do. That is in its early stages, so we will keep people updated on that, but we are accepting names for a sign-on letter for that as well, again by March 25th for the April 6th budget hearing. And then this is just, lastly, just a quick reminder. Quarterly reports are due for the THP Plus and the THP Plus FC participant tracking systems on April 15th. This is for fiscal year quarter 3, which is covering the dates of January 1st through March 31st. And as many of you know, we are always welcoming new providers in counties that are interested in utilizing this free online database where you can store and analyze your THP Plus data and or your THP Plus FC data. The THP Plus FC database is newer, obviously, and we are really excited and hoping to continue to increase the number of youth that are represented in that system, because the more data we have, the more we can advocate for resources and funding for things, and also it provides users, obviously, a really valuable resource, which is to look at data and compare it to aggregate data statewide and to do their own data analysis and track individual progress and collective progress at your organization. We provide free training and TA to users. I'm always available to have a conversation about more about this database, what it looks like, what it would mean, what are the security features, et cetera, et cetera. So at any point, feel free to reach out to me, and we can talk more about using this system. And there's also a link there for where on the THP Plus website information about the participant tracking system lives. And that is it. Our next web seminar is Thursday, May 12th. Again, this happens bi-monthly on the second Thursday of the month from 10 to 11. So we will go ahead and wrap up. Again, I want to thank John for presenting, and if anyone has questions after the close of the web seminar, feel free to send them to info@johnburtonfoundation.org, and you can send your support letters or your permission to add your name to support letters also to info@johnburtonfoundation.org. Thanks. Have a great day.